my company was just valued at $600 million. I'm like, I did a really good job. From a girl who came from a broken family, whose dad's an addict, mom was a public school teacher, who didn't have a lot of money. And I went to a state school. Like, there's nothing extraordinary about, oh, Anne had all these advantages. I didn't. Frankly, I probably should have ended up dropping out of college, staying in North Dakota, and never really challenging myself to think bigger, because statistically, that would have been my path. If I play the victim card here and I disempower myself, I'm going to be the only one who loses. So I'm going to choose against all of the odds to believe in myself.
She just sold her company. She sat in a room full of men negotiating the biggest deal of her lifetime. Wait, she sold for how much? I can't even believe she managed to get double her valuation. Let's keep this just between us.
Forgive my language, but holy shit. Holy shit. Today is the day I get to interview Anne Mahlum. Do you guys know her? She founded Solidcore. With $175,000 of her own savings after starting a nonprofit, she was able to build the premier Pilates studio on the planet, and she was able to ensure that she made $100 million in the process. And she did it with humility and grace and all of it. Like, you guys, this interview, it's unreal. Okay. She was a waitress in Bismarck, North Dakota. It's unbelievable. And the thing about her story that I can't get over is, like, what happens when you simply choose to believe in yourself. If I hear her story, like, everything she did, brilliant. But the thing that I really see from her was the commitment to having an unwavering belief in herself. She is a dream. Here we go. And you have made my day by being here.
And well, thanks for patiently waiting for me as I'm 11 minutes late.
11 minutes late. I could wait all the hours for you because your story is so incredible. And the way you share it openly is so refreshing and so needed for my audience. And so thank you. I just want to say that before anything. Like, your social media, everyone should follow Anne. She tells it all. She tells it all.
Yeah,
okay.
Let's do it. Let's expose some secrets.
Let's get started. Okay, let's start a little bit of time on the start, because I think it's so interesting. From a waitress in Bismarck, opening a nonprofit. Talk to me about that start, and then how Solidcore came to you at this class you took.
Sure. So yeah, I grew up in North Dakota, and yeah, I put myself, like, got my money from high school and college by being a server. The best job at that age. It teaches you about how to interact with people and strangers, anticipating needs, communication, multitasking, and you're on your feet all day. So you get a workout. Highly recommend that job for any young person. It hits so many notches on what prepares you for the future. And then, yeah, went to college, Minnesota, grad school in DC, found myself in Philly. I had only been working in nonprofits up to this point, was looking for my purpose, trying to figure out what the heck I'm supposed to do with my life. But Carrie, I always told myself from a really young age that I was supposed to be somebody, and that I was going to make a lot of money, because my dad's an addict, and he went through a gambling addiction, and money destroyed my parents' marriage and ripped apart my family unit. So I just never really wanted money to be a cause of pain or hurt for me in my future. And so when I was 26 in Philly, trying to figure out my life, I ran by a homeless shelter that I had been running by for a couple years, honestly, and had this idea, literally felt like a light bulb moment, that I'm like, oh my God, why don't I start a running club for this homeless shelter? Ended up doing that. This is a much longer story with a lot of detail that if you're interested, you can go search for it online. But convinced the shelter to let me do this. I get 9 guys started running, build this community. Volunteers are showing up, and I just see what's happening over the few weeks. And I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. I know that I can help people change the way that they see themselves so that they can really change the direction of their life. And we're going to do it with the impetus, through the impetus of running. That's going to be our vehicle to build community and connection and hard work and discipline, and get people to feel really good about what they're capable of. So I went all in on this idea against everybody else's advice, right? I mean, my mom, my dad, everybody's like, what do you mean you're going to do this for work? I'm like, I'm going to build a nonprofit. And nobody understood it, but it's the first time I really, really, really bet on myself because I saw the vision. I was seeing it on a day-to-day basis, what was happening to these guys. I was just guys in the beginning. My life was making sense on a personal level. And I felt I was the perfect person to execute this idea. So it all like was working and
you were in alignment. That's like when you're in perfect alignment with your purpose and your passion and what you're good at and your skill set. Wow.
Totally. And Carrie, I believe that everybody gets windows, right? You put out in the universe what you say that you want, and these windows come along. And if you're not ready for them, the window passes, and like you might have to wait years for another one. You don't get endless of these, but this is why preparation, like doing things that make you uncomfortable, moving cities, cutting off your hair, going to dinner by yourself. You're preparing yourself for the big risk when the opportunity comes your way. And I really, really believe that. And so I felt ready to take, this bet on myself. And I surrounded myself with smart people. We, set out to build a pretty impactful organization, grew it across the country, helped, we had 50 some staff members by the time I left. We had a $6.5 million budget. We had 12 chapters helping thousands of people redefine their identity to redefine their life. So that was like my first go at entrepreneurship. And then it was time to move on. I discovered Back on My Feet wasn't going to be my whole story. It was going to be a chapter in my book. Which was shocking to me, right? When you first start something, you think, I'm going to do this forever.
Well, your whole identity, it's so much of your identity. When you start something and build it, it's a part of you. It's a part of what defines you and who you are. So to make that decision is just huge.
Totally. And so it was like weird when it was like, wait, what do you mean it's time to move on? But I felt it. And I knew I had to let go. I had built something that was pretty sustainable, amazing board, good financials, good infrastructure, process systems. And I'm like, my job is done. And so then I was like opening myself back up again to the universe of like, I got to figure out what's next. And, walked by a Pilates studio in Los Angeles when I was there for Back on My Feet, setting up that chapter. And I was like, oh, this is so cute. I'm going to go take this class. Like, I'm really fit. And I got my butt kicked. And I was like, oh my God, if the workout queen, doesn't know that you can work out like this, that means that the rest of the world has no idea that this way of working out exists. And I started taking more and more Pilates in New York at the time. And my body started to transform. My mental state of just after getting stronger. And, I was just like, I'm obsessed with this. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my next thing, because I know how to build community. I know how to build a high quality experiential brand, right? Back on My Feet was all about in-person community connection experience. And I know how to scale things, and I love fitness. So like, this is my next perfect thing. This is a game that I can win. And so I went all in, opened my first studio in November of 2013, the day before my birthday, actually. And then I opened 5 more in that first year, and then opened 25 in the first 3.5 years. And we can get into the rest of it.
Okay. We're getting into it. We're getting into it right now. So you start this with your savings. So you saved up $175,000, right? And you say, okay, I'm going to put this in. I'm going to build the first location. And then pretty quickly you see that it catches on and that you were able to do it profitably. I read that in the first year you did something like $2 million and were able to get a really healthy margin off of that, correct?
Yep.
I always ask this, especially of people who've had these substantial exits. At any point in the early phase, did you have any doubt, or did you know that this was where you were going and this was it?
Yeah, I had doubt before I opened, right? Because that's when it's most scary. And I was putting all of my chips on the table. And even though I was comfortable with risk, just like anybody else, we have these moments of
course,
fear, limiting beliefs, doubts, and they were circling. Yep. And so I get an offer from a friend for $75K for 30% of solid core before I'd even opened, right? So he's telling me, this is how much I believe in you. You don't even have anything yet, and I'll do this. And I'm thinking, gosh, like maybe this is a good idea. If this doesn't work out, at least I didn't spend all my money on it. And as soon as I start to rationalize all of that, I'm like, what am I doing? If I take this money, all I'm doing is saying I doubt myself a little bit. And I'm hedging my bets. And when this gets hard, I am going to lean into that $75K and be like, at least I didn't spend all my money. and I'm not really going to push when things get really hard. And so I was like, I can't take this money. And after that, I was like, I'm invincible. I'm going to do this, build this. I'm all in. No one's going to out compete me, outscale me. And I wrote a note to myself, literally the day I opened, that I opened my first studio today. I'm going to open 100. And then I'm going to sell this business. I know I can do this. And like, I posted that on Instagram, which like all my entrepreneur friends like loved, because it's like, this is what I say manifesting, but this is what, this is what manifesting looks like. And once I had that vision, Carrie, it's like everything came about execution of the vision. The decisions were aligned. And I'm like, if the decision was not in support of this goal, it was a no. And so every opportunity that came up, right, it was like, does this get us here or not? So I tell founders, have not just an ambiguous broad stroke vision, be specific, because then you have something to drive toward and you won't like get pulled in different directions.
Yes. Okay. So you're self-financing, you say no to the friend, you're going in. At what point do you decide to take in any additional capital?
Yeah. So I took additional capital from an individual. So I think it was about 3.5 million.
Okay.
I was having a pretty contentious relationship with the owner of the machines that I was licensing from. He had up with this licensing deal that you could buy territories. It wasn't a franchise, but you could buy a territory and then he would only sell you those machines in that territory. So he would make you buy the territory and then sell you the machine. So it was kind of like a workaround on a franchise model. And I began to think, this is so shady. Like, I'm actually not getting any support. There's no branded name, right? It's my own name. I own 100% of my business.
You're doing the work, right?
I'm doing all of the training, right? It's not like there's like, great, Anne, we're going to provide you with all of this marketing support. It's whatever, nothing. And so then the machines started breaking and I couldn't get them fixed fast enough because I have to go through this individual. And I'm like, I'm not going to fulfill my vision and mission if I continue to be in a relationship with this guy who also, sent me a cease and desist and said, if I talk to any other licensees, because I was trying to like give him feedback on how I thought he could do a better job for us. He didn't like that. Right. And so he was like, if you talk to another licensee, I will never let you open another studio again. And I was like, oh my God, who does he think he is? And I was like, wait, he can actually do that. Like, I can't be beholden to this individual. So I sent him a breach of contract because I felt like he was breaching his contract with me. He sued me, which I knew he was going to do. I countersued him. I, in the background, was making my own machines. And I called up my friend and I'm like, listen, I need capital to make my own machines. I'm probably going to go through a lawsuit. Here's why I think I'm going to win. And he gave me the money. Like, that's also how much this individual believed in me and this idea and what could come. But without that decision, I mean, Solid Core would have remained a regional brand because we wouldn't have been able to expand across the country. So we went through that lawsuit, all intents and purposes. We won. He had to buy back his machines and I haven't talked to him in 10-ish years.
Wow. Okay. So you take on this first bit, very intentional with what the vision was for what you were going to do with that. Yeah. You were going to take in that money. You were going to build your own machines. You were going to get the heck out of being like beholden to this person and you were going to grow. Okay. So you do that. You start to grow. When do you take in money again? How many locations do you have at this point? And also, when you're growing like that and you're starting as a startup that has invested all of your own personal capital, at what point do you actually start feeling like you're making money? I would imagine you have to pour everything and so much of it back into the business. I'm interested in that too. So both that and then next when you're making money.
So there was enough to go around, believe it or not. And this is not a normal startup story.
Right.
Trust me, I get that. But and I think back to like the economics of the studios, because I wasn't as an experienced business person, I was so intentional with every dollar I spent because I didn't know it was around the corner.
Right.
So like I didn't spend money on something that I didn't think was going to give me an ROI. There's a photo of me. I wanted pallet wood on the walls of the studios because I thought it was like, listen, I want to have this nice balance between masculine and feminine energy in here. I didn't want it to feel like a chick workout that like was going to turn off athletes or guys, like that it was easy. I'm like, no, this thing is hard. So it had this raw feeling. And I remember getting a quote for like 10 grand for put up pallet wood. And I'm like, I'll do it myself. Like I literally got on freepalletwood.com, got pallet wood delivered, convinced my friends with pizza and beer to come and like strip off the pallet wood, sand it, and nail it to the wall. And I'm saying this because it actually works a lot in your favor. There's a lot of people who think like, I don't have business experience. I'm like, it's actually a good thing because you will be so frugal with what you spend because you're not really sure of like, you know what I mean? So like I was so tight on the capital. I only paid for things that I'm like, is this necessity for the business? So we were doing crazy margins right away because I only had one staff member in the studio at a time, right? Which was super easy to make sure that like our overhead was in check. And I would do these pre-sales. And so people would buy like 20 packs, 30 packs. So I was getting all of this cash flow that of course I had to deliver on the service, but that I could roll into getting the next studio open. And then there was like, I would just take distributions from the company. So because I was the only owner, once I felt good about where we were, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to pull out 50 grand. So I just did that along the way, but never at sacrifice, obviously, of the company. I mean, again, we opened 6 studios in the first year. So I felt really good about that. And then after I got away from this licensed owner and machines and making my own machines, we took it to 25 studios. And I'm like, I'm tired of opening 4 or 5 of these a year. I want to open 20 to 30 a year. Again, I feel like I had the knack for infrastructure, process, whatever, but I needed better talent and I needed more capital to obviously inject into new studios. So we had to up the talent. We had to up the assembly line, as I called it, right? Meaning we had to have more deals in the hopper and more contractors that we were like opening 3 studios a month versus 1 every couple months. So it's like, okay, how do we do this logistically? Obviously, I can't be at all the studio openings. So it was just like this master plan of working backwards. And then what talent do we need? Who gets delegated to what? I mean, used to be this thing on the wall, Carrie, of like, okay, here's when the studios are opening. What does this mean for talent recruitment? What does this mean for training schedule? Right? What does this mean for architect permits, contractors? Like every department tracked to this is when this studio is opening. So if we're opening April, 16th, everybody knew their role to get that open. And then another person, another studio is opening May 3rd. So anyway, it was just this master, like beautiful, organized plan of execution. So yeah, then I was like, I want to open more. And so I did a raise. I got in touch with my lawyer, who is my lawyer today through Soul Cycle Founders. And he introduced me to like 5 or 6 VC and private equity firms. And also for the people listening, I knew nothing.
That's what I was going to ask you. Go. Tell me the process.
Well, again, people think like you just must know, went to school. I knew nothing. Like I didn't know what any of the acronyms meant. I didn't know that there was different classes of stock. Like I didn't know this. And so my lawyer, who is Steve Seiser over at Lowenstein, I will make any introduction to him that anybody wants. This guy never, ever made me feel stupid. And he is a killer. He is so good at like protecting the founder. And he educated me along the way, for these deals. And I got things in these deals. I mean, I stayed in control of my company this entire time, even though I wasn't the majority owner at the end. I had all of the board votes. You couldn't block me from selling the business. I just had all of the control. I mean, he's excellent. So he introduced me to 5 or so people. I had 3 bids. One was really close. And then the other one gave me everything that I was asking for. And that was really important to me. I was putting 12 million into the business and I was taking 6 off the table for myself.
Yeah.
I wanted a little bit of financial security so that I got motivated to just grow. And I'll tell you what, private equity hates that. These guys did not want to give me a dime because in their words, they want me motivated. And I remember this speech I gave to them and was like, listen, I've opened 25 of these in 3.5 years. If you think I'm in this for $6 million and I'm going to like start watching Netflix all day or I take a secret trip to Mexico in the middle of the night and be like, you're stuck with the business. Like you guys shouldn't do this deal. Like if you even have an inkling of thought that way. And fortunately, one of the guys who was part of Peterson Partners at the time gotten to know me pretty well over this process. And he was like, guys, more than anything else, Anne wants to win. And she is not going to quit until she wins. And that's why we are backing her. And so, they gave me the 6 million, we put the 12 in the business, and then we opened 50 more studios in the next 2 years and 3 months.
Okay. And when was this? This was in...
That was in 2017. So I took that deal October 2017. And then February 2020, we were at like 76 studios, and we had hired a banker and like ready to go to market to sell, because we were going to be at 100 studios by the end of 2020. And I also want to say this, Carrie, I put out a plan for Peterson, my first private equity round. I showed them, here's how we're going to get to 100 locations. Do not raise money if you cannot articulate what the results and the outcome of this money is going to do. Because I have friends, I have people who are not friends that I have seen take capital, they take money to grow, and they end up not growing or growing really slowly. And literally this just happened to someone I know. They've been in their business for 12 years. They got $0.
And then you're stuck.
The private equity money picked over every year. And so after, during COVID, they shut everything down and they didn't grow again. They didn't get anything.
Yep.
Anything. Yep. So I'm like, you guys, you cannot take private equity money if you are not prepared to grow quickly.
Exactly.
Like, if you're not sure if you know how, don't do it.
You have to know. You have to know, because they're not necessarily going to know at all. And they're going to have to follow your vision, not the other way around. You're not.
Private equity, right, does everything possible to protect their downside. So they will make sure. I had to do preferred capital also, right? So my private equity partners, they had preferred capital that was sitting in front of mine, meaning if I effed up, and I didn't
get first.
Business, I didn't get paid, they got paid first.
Yep.
That is how it works with private equity.
Yep.
These guys are not going to take risks with their money and just be like, no problem. Like, we just trust that this is going to work out, because there's a lot that don't work out.
Right.
So it's really, really, really important that you feel confident in your ability to scale your business when you're raising money. And do not get so stuck on valuation. If you're like, I want this high valuation so that I get to retain more equity, you have to deliver on that valuation, knowing that the next round better be at least double that to make sense, to honor the investors that you currently took on, and for your own financial capability, earning power. And like, I see a lot of people do that wrong too. It's like you screw your first investors by trying to raise at such a high valuation, and you don't deliver.
Such a good tip. Okay, so you've taken this money and you're focused on growth. You're so excited. You're going to open 100 locations, and you have this plan, and you're getting ready for sale, and it's February 2020. And most of your life, actually, in hearing the early side, is thinking like, you never know what could go wrong. So we're going to have these planning this way. And all of a sudden something very big goes wrong, which was way beyond your control, of course, which is that the world shuts down. So what happens?
We want to know what's still funny. Again, I have like a high risk tolerance.
Yep.
I was on vacation actually early March, like March 8th, 9th, 10th. And I'm getting these notifications about COVID. And I'm just like, so-and-so is infected. Like, they were using the word infected.
Yeah.
And I forget the Contagion, that movie that we all watch.
Yeah.
And I just like have flashes of this. And I call my COO and I'm like, hey, listen, can you do me a favor and run numbers on a scenario if our business dropped like 25%? This was Brian, who's the current CEO. And he was kind of like, are you joking? He has way of a less risk tolerance than I do. He would normally be the one making that call to me.
Yeah.
And he thought I was nuts. And I'm like, just do it. And obviously 15 days later, we were completely shut down. Yeah, God, I remember that day. I remember like being in the corporate offices, the DC, and I'm just like, okay. But I never, ever, ever, and you can ask members of my team, if you said, did Anne ever give you any feeling like that was going to be it for Solid Core, that was like, you guys weren't going to recover? And they'd be like, no, Anne went into like full on, it is wartime and everybody better get their armor on because we got like a fight to happen here. I'm a little bit of a wartime CEO. So when there's big issues and problems and crises, I'm like, get me up there and let me be the executor. I'm really comfortable in that stage. So obviously I had to make some tough decisions. We laid off all the staff. We were one of the first fitness companies to do that. We got a lot of flack for it.
Yep.
We didn't have any money coming in. And so, I told my team over Zoom, and we got to work. And when there's a war, right, I didn't actually view COVID as the enemy because I can't do anything about that. I was like, who's the enemy that we actually need to befriend? And it was the landlords, because these guys want their rent and they want to get paid. And if they force us to pay rent when we don't have revenue coming in, that's what's going to kill us, not this COVID thing. So me and our VP of legal was extraordinary, Dimple, we got to work on befriending. I mean, we already had great relationships, but we were like, listen, we obviously can't pay rent. We are going to make it through this. We are already 6 feet apart, from where we are, but like, you got to help us through this next little bit, and we can extend the lease term, or like, we'll add, rent payments in year 8 or 9. But like, if you force us to pay right now, like you're going to crush us and you're going to have a vacancy. Like, why not work with us? And like, we know we are going to get through this. And even through PPP, right? When we got all that money, landlords like, great, you have money to pay us. And we're like, that's not what that money's for. We are paying our employees.
Right.
So we had 75 landlords. It was like how I spent the majority of my time was
negotiating.
I just negotiate, and how to win friends and influence people. Like, all of that came into play with those conversations.
And then you took on additional capital to sort of weather that storm, right? So tell me about that.
Yeah. So, listen, we're in-person brick and mortar, right? We were in 20-ish states at this point with all different regulations. And we were noticing, of course, that red states were allowing us to operate with less restrictions than blue states. Like New York, for goodness sakes, like we would open, shut down, masks, no masks. And it was like, this is terrible. So we were like, you know what? We're going to raise capital and we're going to expand into red states for the foreseeable future. So we took money in 2021. We signed a deal end of January, early February, $50 million of capital. A lot of that, like 35 or something of that, was secondary.
Yep.
I paid some of the Peterson, right? Because they had some preferred capital. Yep. I needed them to give up their pref. Yep. So I needed to give them some capital. They went to common. I took a little bit more money off the table in that round also. And then BMG came on as a minority partner that also had a preferred return on their capital at that point.
You come out of that by reducing your first PE firm's preferred. So you're taking on, in a way, you're taking on more of the risk, right? You get paid first, but like, it's you're in charge here, and you're pulling a little more off the table to survive. You're good. And then we're investing in growing into red states. How does this work?
It worked great. I mean, do you remember when all the stuff was like, gyms are dead, no one will ever go back to working out at a gym? And I was like, people are crazy.
Yes.
It's the same of 9/11. Like, no one will ever fly again.
Right.
I'm like, people forget really quickly. And we are social beings. And as soon as this thing is under control, which we felt it will get under control, people are going to come back. Yep. And so everybody else got like the shiny object of like, go digital, go digital. And I remember talking with my team and I'm like, if we try to play that game, we're going to lose. Nobody here has any experience in digital brand, marketing, at-home fitness, whatever. Like, we need to do the best we can of providing classes online, but we are going to double down on expansion. While everybody else was still slowly getting studios open in 2021, we opened 11 new studios.
Wow.
In red states where we were insanely busy. People were like desperate to get back to working out. I mean, I'm a workout nut. I hate working out at home. Like I have to go somewhere. And so again, a lot of other people feel the same way. So we were crushing it. And in 2022, like our business was back pretty much 100%. So we were like really, we played offense, which I always believe in. And like doing that really put us in a position to outcompete the other brands in the market.
So now here we are, and we're getting to the end of the rainbow, and decides you're going to take the company through a sale. You're going to sell your shares. Talk about what went into this, how it worked.
So an important part of this is succession planning. So as soon as I took BMG's money again in February of 2021, that whole deal, right? I was like, listen, you need to know I'm going to promote Brian to CEO and I'm going to move into the exec chair role. Yeah. I'm not going anywhere. I will be as involved as we need, but I need to show, right? And same thing for BMG. I'm like, it is better for all of us if we can show this business is not dependent on its founder, because you guys know on the next round, I am not going with, and I am not working for private equity that they're going to own my company and then I work for them. It's not happening. So we all need to work together to support Brian. He is capable. He is the right person to be the next CEO. Again, I will mentor, I will be there, but I'm going to move in the exec chair role. That was crucial because over the next 2 years, we executed really well on the business and it continued to, climb to new heights. And we were like doing better than we were before COVID at the end of 22. So I was like, I'm ready to sell. My VMG partners had only been in the business for less than 2 years at that point. And they were like, we don't want to sell yet. And I'm like,
right.
Okay, well, I had control to take the company to market. And so they were like, and what if we help you, right? We can find someone to take your shares. We actually want to buy some of them and we want to be majority owner. So these guys, don't forget, they had a preferred return on the business also. And they were like, we don't want it. We want to be majority owner. We want to continue with this business over the next couple of years. And I was like, I'm ready to be done. I've been in this business for almost, at the point we had these conversations, 9 years. And I wanted to be done in 2020, right? Because I hired bankers to be done then. And I was like, here's my number. And if you guys can get my number, I want to make $100 million over my time at Solidcore. And so, they went and shopped the deal and blah, blah, blah. And we got to 90 million, which was what my shares were going to be worth. And I'm like, my number is 100 million. So because the business was doing so well, and because I actually had the leverage, if I could take the whole thing to market, I got them to agree to an extra $10 million that my equity wasn't even worth in order to get that deal done. And I feel really great, Carrie, because it worked out for everybody. Solidcore sold to L. Catterton, about 2 years, less than 2 years later for $600 million. So VMG made, they put $50 million in. They were the majority owner. They did amazing within 4 years. I put $175,000 in. I made $100 million. Peterson, made almost a 4x return. Kohlberg, who came in and bought my shares, was only in it for, again,
5 minutes.
But they made, everybody made money.
Everybody made money. Everybody made money. I want to talk about the significance of 100 million. I was just reading an article by a woman who also has a podcast about, it's called The Exit Paradox. And she was talking about, what's the number? And that there is a different level of comfort, significance, et cetera, with the when the 100 million makes a big difference. Did you pick the number because it was a number of significance for you? Was it like you always dreamed you were going to get to 9 figures? Why was the 100 million so significant?
Yeah, I think when you say sold your business for 8 figures, that could be 10 or 90.
It could be 10 or 90. It could be anything.
I didn't want to have to be like, but it was high 8 figures. And be like, I sold my business for 9 figures. I made 9 figures over, not including my salary, my, those kinds of things. It just felt like that was the value that I created, which I obviously can look now and say, of course I did, because everybody else made, 4, 5, 6 times their money. I mean, I made a ridiculous return on my money, but
yes,
as I should, I'm the founder.
But you're a human. You were not at that point. You were not like a PE firm. You're one person who invested their life savings into it. That you should get that outsized return.
Totally. And I always say this too, the entrepreneur takes all the risk. They should get the most money, but it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. I mean, I gave millions to my employees because I wouldn't have sold my business without the dedicated passion and talent from so many people. And I wanted them, everybody's like, oh my God, Ann, that was so generous. I'm like, hold on, that wasn't charity. Those people earned that as far as I'm concerned. They earned every ounce of that because they continued to consistently show up and provide a quality experience that kept clients coming back, that raised the valuation of that business. So yeah, I mean, it was just like, I'd have been like 90 million, no, I want to get to the 100. I just wanted that level of an exit for myself.
It was the number that was there for you. It was what was right for you. Okay. The moment you close, what happens? What is life like for you in that moment?
Well, I'm actually in a new relationship at this time. I had been dating Brett, who's my husband now, but we were going back and forth. He was in San Diego. I was in New York. And, we were, August to, like 6-7 months in. Our relationship moved really quickly, but it was awesome. He was with me in New York. I'm like, oh, I want you like here when the deal closes. And then like we were in the airport, the LaGuardia airport, flying down to DC to tell the team later that day, the next day about everything. And I'm like sitting on the phone, we're doing the calls to verify everything. And like Brett's sitting across from me. I'm like drinking my coffee. I'm like, yep, approved. Yep, sounds good. Like end up the phone. And an hour later, I like look at my phone and I'm like, here's the wire. Like it was
the wire.
It was so awesome. Like this is the other thing that I tell founders, because a couple things here that are kind of controversial. One, I do not believe in starving founders. I'm doing a deal right now with somebody and like he wants to take capital off table. And I'm like, yes, because I don't want you to be strapped for cash. And then all of a sudden, like an opportunity to sell comes along and you're like, I'll take it. I want you to be comfortable so you can be patient. And that's what allowed me to do the same thing, because I had taken $14-15 million before I had my big exit. If I didn't get my number, Carrie, I was going to tell those guys, then we're not selling. We'll just wait. I'll wait a year. Yep. I literally have 15, like I'm not strapped for cash. So it puts you in such a position of power that you can be patient, and patience is a killer skill set to have when you are negotiating a deal. So do not be a starving founder. It's not noble and is not admirable. And then the second one is I wanted a happy ending. I wasn't going to be one of those founders that had to work for an earnout and then you're fighting with the private equity guy on what the numbers really are.
Yes.
And that last couple years there are so miserable. And you're like, God, I don't even care about the money. I'm just done. I can't do this anymore.
Yes.
I know myself well enough. I can't work for anybody else. I have to be able to call the shots. I'm not going to report to anybody. And so I'm like, I'm going to go out on top. Everybody's like, oh my God, Ann, you could have made so much more money if you would have stayed. I'm like, yeah, so the story goes, shoulda, woulda, coulda. Like, I'm very happy. I've never thought once, oh my God, if I just would have stayed, I would have, another 70 million. Like, I'm sorry, I have enough and I'm really great at investing my money. Like my money's already had, the stock market's done 50% returns since I've, maybe a little bit less now since Trump got in office, but like I'm totally good. I wanted the happy ending that was celebratory, that was smooth and seamless, and I wasn't willing to risk that. So that was a really, really important part of my story and my journey and my relationship with Solidcore.
I have one last question for you.
Sure.
You talked about your start in life and your upbringing and your relationship with money then, and that, I'm going to go out, I'm going to make a lot of money. How do you think that impacted, how did how you were brought up impact how you got to where you are? Do you think it had an impact and it's part of the story?
Huge. Like I never looked at money from a materialistic standpoint. I looked at money as it's a trophy for the value that I create. And again, I convinced myself that if I had enough money that I wouldn't have as much pain in my life. And obviously I've had heartbreak, like that, you can't escape all of the pain, but it signified something for me. It wasn't like, I'm going to have all this money so that I can, have all of these materialistic things. It was, I can avoid hurt and pain. Now that may sound like you can't do that, but it was fuel for me. And it worked. And one of the things I love that I heard in my early days of Solidcore from a woman in private equity, she was like, listen, Ann, money follows, it never leads. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. Exactly. Like I never built Solidcore with, I'm only doing this to make money. I focused on providing a high quality experience. And as an entrepreneur, money is a trophy. When my company was just valued at $600 million, I'm like, I did a really good job. From a girl who came from a broken family whose dad's an addict, mom was a public school teacher, we didn't have a lot of money. We went on vacation every 2 to 3 years because that's what, my parents saved up for. And I went to a state school. Like there's nothing extraordinary about, oh, Anne had all these advantages. I didn't. Frankly, I probably should have ended up dropping out of college, staying in North Dakota, and never really challenging myself to think bigger, because statistically, that would have been my path.
Right.
And I just was like, man, if I play the victim card here and I disempower myself, I'm going to be the only one who loses. So I'm going to choose against all of the odds to believe in myself and to focus on playing a game that I can win. I'm bad at math, at science. Like I had to work really hard in algebra and pre-calc, like so hard. These things were not natural for me. But what is natural for me is I have a high EQ. I understand how to build community. I understand how to provide a consistent, high quality experience. And I just was like, how do I apply that to business? What businesses need those talents to succeed? And both Back on My Feet and Solid Core, like without those ingredients, wouldn't have ever become successful. So every one of us have to figure out what are our like top skill sets and talents. And then we have to find a business. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to find a business that those things marry and match up nicely. If you try to get me to make like some tech product, I would fail. Like I'm not the right person to do that. I wouldn't be energized by it. But you need a business where you can bring people together. Like, okay, that I can definitely, step into and do a good job there.
And you are a treasure. I hope everybody follows you and continues to use you as an inspiration. Everything you write about, speak about, do on film, it's just, you're a joy. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Carrie. That was so fun.
So fun.